And welcome back to the Wolverine podcast. I'm John Borton. We are here with Tom Crawford. He's a guy that is based out of East Lansing, Michigan. You know him,
God.
big Michigan guy.
Yeah.
Tough place to be these days.
I'm thinking about moving. Seriously. I mean,
Okay.
seriously.
Well, I mean, if for doing the press pass with one Rico Beard alone these days, that's worth a Purple Heart, I would think.
Yeah. Combat pay, definitely. Yeah, it's interesting. You know, we've taken it this rivalry, Michigan State. You know, all in good nature, ribbing and things of that nature. For the most part, it's getting a little more personal in the D'Antonio era. Now it's at that toxic level, and some of the things that have come out in the last couple of days. I mean, I hope this thing comes to a culmination in terms of some type of a statement from the NR police department or the Big Ten Conference. When you just go, dark on it in terms of any communication, then things just fester even more. That's my feeling.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, and we got this development today. You see this attorney for, on the Michigan State side of things, charging that it was a Michigan player, in fact, that started this. And it's just, I mean, it's filled with very unprofessional language, in my opinion.
Oh my God! I couldn't. That attorney. I said to myself, "This is attorney wrote this copy."
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't believe it. It didn't
misspells Devin Bush's name. It launches into this premise that Jim Harbaugh is the the victim in chief and all this howling at the moon and
the instigator
and all of that, and then immediately the instigator and immediately starts to veer off into Juwan Howard and Devin Bush and what about this and what about that.
Yeah.
And by the way, a Michigan player started it all.
Yeah,
and throws in the fact that he was charging with his helmet. And I was saying to you before, what does charging with your helmet mean? Is it like you lower your head and I'm going to hit you? Or it's not, it didn't say swinging a helmet, didn't say anything like that. I mean, it's like you're being real careful. You want to put that word in there. You want to put helmet in there, but you don't want to state a specific action with it because the video probably does not support that.
Yeah. Let's go to the video. Hell, I'm open to anything. I want to get to the truth.
Absolutely.
Show me the video. Right. Film, don't lie. Michigan State is really damn good at something. Playing the victim. They got that down to a science.
Yeah. Well, hey, if there's something that shows that a Michigan player was involved, then you do something about that because that's what we're reasonable on this side of things. Yeah, that would be warranted. But B, there are very little that a single player could do that would warrant a beatdown by about 8 guys. So I don't think that lets Michigan State off the hook either way. But we want it. Hey, let's let the video tell what it tells. And then take care of it from there.
Yeah, I'll go back and say. Yeah, I'll go back and say. You know what? You got the evidence now. I guess you were right, or I guess it was the other direction. But show me the video, and this is going to play. The truth is going to play out. I'm telling you what, John, and I know we got to get on to more important things like between the lines of Michigan football.
Bigger fish to fry.
There you go. It's getting more and more difficult to navigate this rivalry for me. Just interacting with Michigan State people. I'm walking on eggshells. Here, just with election talk with people of varying, swimming in different lanes. That's even easier than doing this Michigan State thing. It's nuts. So I just want this thing to culminate, get to the truth. I want the truth to be made, so if it takes more time, do it. But man, what these, Izzo's comment last night, my radio TV partner, Jack Ebling, threw him a question. And it was about 4 minutes long. And I love Izzo. I consider him a friend, but I didn't like what he said. I'll just say that I did not like what he said. We'll leave it at that.
All right. Okay. Well, fair enough. Certainly, I know I saw the
I'm
usual
hot.
comment that there's more than one bad guy in this
Yeah,
thing,
one
and
bad guy. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So, all right, well, we're talking about bigger fish to fry. Let's fry this fish right now, and that is the fact that Michigan, in the last 4 games, has exerted complete and utter dominance in the second half. You saw it against Rutgers. We've seen it 100 points to 3 in the last 4
Crazy.
games in the second half. That's unprecedented to me. I mean, I don't know when it's ever happened before.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
Well, the 100 is impressive. Okay. But
Mm-hmm.
the three is really
Ridiculous.
impressive. Jesse Mentor,
That's
I mean,
early 70s
I
stuff.
mean, oh yeah, you're the dude, man. You are I mean, some of these metrics on Michigan, what their accomplishments are in this 2-year set remind me back in the 70s when I was in school. You know, I mean, when Michigan dominated
Exactly.
back to back. I mean, this has been a long, long time because when you look at what Michigan, like in 06, then when you went to an 07 and back to an 8-4, a 4-loss team, you know, when you look at the history, even Mo had the same problem of getting back to back good seasons. I guess 91, 92. But I'm saying this is another level that Michigan has accomplished. And if they get to 10-0 for the second straight, I mean, this is well, they didn't get to 10-0 last year, but I mean, they were in the CFP last year, and they likely, I mean, I think they're going to be in the CFP this year because I think they're going to beat Ohio State this year. I'm feeling that right now, but this
All
is
right. Well, we will.
unbelievable.
Yep, definitely going to talk about that. It's interesting. You look at these stats that we're showing: 38-0 in the second half, 57 yards in the second half for Rutgers. You go right down the line. Michigan just is crushing teams in the second half, and so for some, that brings forth the question: well, okay, why aren't they doing this right out of the gate? And I found that one Doug Karsch, who is the voice of Michigan football, and brings a lot, I believe, to the broadcast and to his Monday segments with us on our website. That I think he has something here that was worth talking about. He said on our regular segment, points out the fact that Michigan scripts its first 15 plays. And he thinks that plays into, and they work on those throughout the week, that whole segment, those
Right.
15 plays.
A lot
You
of
do
teams
it
do
every
that.
day.
Yep.
You work it 5
Yep.
times. And so that's your 6th time going through it all when you
Right.
hit Saturday. And therefore, you've got that high percentage where you're cashing in. But then also, what they put in there are some testers in terms of formation and things like that. And they see how the defense is going to handle it. And then for the rest of the game, you have an idea of how you're going to react to these different things. And he thinks that on 2 levels, you're accomplishing something. Going in with a package that you feel really good about and you're well drilled on. And then secondly, that you have a good idea of what the defense is going to throw against you in different down and distance, in different formations, and so you are more ready to go. You can't really do that with the defense, but we've talked about the adjustments the defense has made. Jim Harbaugh talked about how hard they're playing. Your reaction to all of that in terms of how it's playing out?
Yeah, and I think a lot of teams, script out those first 15. I mean, I think
Mm-hmm.
and that's a good way to do it. When you think about Michigan, doing better in the second half, I mean, they could have done better in the first half. There were some execution issues. Obviously, a
Sure.
block punt for a touchdown is that's a destructive play to your team. I mean, that one, we heard about all that. The percentage chances of a team winning a game when they have a block punt return for touchdown is huge. Okay, so Michigan survived that. That's one of those dramatic moments. I mean, they got to fix that, but they survived that. And then there were also some execution plays. I thought the JJ throw to Andrell Anthony. I mean that they were a little bit off, both of them. I mean, in execution. I mean, JJ could have hung that out a little. Could have a little more loft on that, and maybe Andrell could have had more
Mm-hmm.
time to get to it. But I thought it was still catchable. I mean, it would have been a heck of a catch, but that's still a catchable ball. And I mean, that changes the game right there. I mean, that changes it. I mean, the first half right there, little things like that. And then defensively, I think Michigan makes a lot of adjustments from a secondary standpoint because that
Sure.
quarterback got hot. He was a freshman. He was in rhythm in the first half, but then they got the quarterback pressures, which were seemingly, remember the Indiana game with the 7 sacks in the second half,
Oh, yeah.
no sacks, I
Right.
think, in the first half. I mean, so the
Mhm.
quarterback pressures that it bothered this guy, and this quarterback, and all of a sudden, look what happens. 3 interceptions and 1 pick six, and there's the one and
Absolutely.
only
And
Doug Karsch.
speaking of the one and only Doug Karsch, he is now with us. Doug, we were just talking about the adjustments and the second half. He's
He's
telling
trying to
us
hear
he
you.
cannot.
He cannot hear you. I think that's what he's saying right now.
Can you
Will
hear
it
me
work?
now? All right. Well, we'll
We'll
try this
remedy
again. We'll
that.
keep going with this segment. But anyway, you mentioned the parts to it that I think are very important. Here's a couple more. You're playing with a jumbled up offensive line because of injury,
Hmm.
and you're also not. You don't have one of your starting cornerbacks, thanks to Michigan State
Right.
University with
Right.
Jamon Green out.
Right.
Also, your Lou Groza kicker barely misses a couple of 50-yard
Yeah.
field goals. One
Yeah.
slides just right and one slides just left. If
Yeah.
all those things are different, you're right. You do start quicker. So I think that the way they came on, it is just one more block in a chain of really magnificent performances. So all right, let's move on to one Mr. Blake Corum. He had a little bit of a rough start,
Yeah. Puking up.
like
Yeah.
he lost a little supper on the field as he
Yeah.
was coming off early, but he recovered and another 100-yard game. My question to you, Tom Crawford, is this: this is a guy that all of a sudden has got a chance to have one of the greatest rushing the football seasons in Michigan football history. I mean, this could be a top 5 effort quite easily if he finishes strong. Your thoughts on his place in Michigan football history if he continues to do the kind of things he's been doing?
Well, I think he could be one of the all-time greats. I think we mentioned, I keep going back to Tyrone Wheatley and Tomunga Biaka Batuka in terms of uh, backs that could dominate a game like Blake in terms of durability and speed. And he's got both. I mean, he's a powerful
Mhm.
back. He's got sometimes I think I'm looking at Derrick Henry sometimes, and I know that's high cotton right there when I say that. But I mean, when
Mhm.
I look at Derrick Henry, and he's a bigger guy. Okay, Derrick Henry, but another team, Alabama, but and now the Titans. I just think that he could be the best. I mean, I think he's stronger and more cut and than Mike Hart was. Mike Hart was a great back, great blocker. I think he could be all time great. Now we go back, you got Ron Johnson, and I'm an old man here, so I'm gonna throw Ron Johnson, Billy Taylor. You can go on. Rob Lytle, the late Rob Lytle. There's been a lot of great backs. I mean, a ton of great backs, but I think Blake could be the best of them all. I truly think that.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the guy he most reminds me of. I mean, Derrick Henry. That's high praise, and Henry's obviously a bigger back.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
whether
I'm
it's
talking about the style. The style is what I'm talking about.
right,
Yeah,
the stature and the whole package, I flash back to Mike Hart with him. He's coaching him now,
yeah.
but those quick feet and how just relentless he is, and he's good with the football, and even right down to this. Now, Mike Hart has said publicly, well, Blake's a little more. He's smarter than I am, and a little more controlled than I was when I was playing, as far as things he says. But after that Michigan State game, Blake Corum was summoning the spirit of Mike Hart in some of his subtle and not so subtle trash talk.
Oh yeah, yeah. We saw that we were walking in the post game presser.
Mhm.
to comment. But when you think about Mike Hart versus Blake Corum, and I'm going back to 2004, obviously, to 2007, those 4 seasons. I don't remember the huge chunk play. I mean, the breakaway for touchdowns that Blake had last year and this year with Mike Hart. I mean, Mike Hart was really good,
Mhm.
between, the 20s, and he got 25, 35-yard chunk plays going left a lot, dragging people, a strong runner. Um, but do you remember those taking it to the house touchdowns of Mike Hart? I don't remember
I
those.
remember I remember, some 45s and 50s, but I do not believe that Mike Hart had the sustained burst that
Yes.
Blake
Good,
Corum has.
good
So I
phraseology.
will,
Yes.
yeah, he could be more easily caught than Blake Corum. So
Yeah. Yeah.
we're on the same page there. Well,
Okay.
let's move on and talk a little bit about something that one of your broadcast partners brought up that I find just absolutely fascinating. I've been it's been tough for me to stop thinking about it
Okay.
since Jack Ebling said this in the Michigan press box before the Michigan State game. He said, if Michigan finishes this thing out, Michigan 22 is going to be greater than Michigan 1997. And there was some discussion that started some discussion on our board this week. And I went back and looked, and the 97 team played number 3, number 4. This is when they played them. Number 8, a couple of number 15s, a number 23, and so far this Michigan team has played one ranked team at the time they played them, Penn State
Right.
at number 10. So, but to finish these days, I mean, you got to beat 3 top 5 teams,
You got to win 14
Ohio
games.
State, and then the
Yeah.
playoffs.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So I'm thinking, okay, if all of that happens, well, Jack, then you're probably right. But that's a big if, and that's a high bar.
Yeah. See, when I look at that 97 season, John, I'm not one of these guys of evaluating a team what they were ranked at the time. Like when Michigan beat Colorado in that opener, the what they were ranked at the time was pretty high. Colorado didn't end up being a very good team, and I
That's
don't
true.
think Ohio State ended up being as good at the end of the season as they were, or even though that was the last game. I mean, I'm just saying, when I got to look at the whole. You
Sure.
go to 14 games, and then we'll do an evaluation, because the Georgia Bulldogs would be on that list. And there's
Right.
no opponent in 97 that Michigan played that is a Georgia Bulldog caliber. And it looks like we have Doug Karsch.
Yes, Doug Karsch is back with us. And Doug, I want to, great to have you with us. I want to, the voice of Michigan football, obviously. We want to get you in on this. Jack Ebling, before the Michigan State game in the Michigan press box, made the proclamation that he thinks if Michigan finishes this thing out, he said, which means runs the table the rest of the way, then 2022 becomes greater than 1997. And I have a hard time arguing that against that, except, I mean, the thing is, you have got a lot of work to do to run the table these days at the end of the season. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a little bit of putting the cart before the horse, right? I mean, making that comparison now. If they run the table and then beat, TCU and Georgia to win the national championship, then I would say yes. If
Mhm.
they run the table means beat Ohio State and beat whoever comes out of the West, which at this point I can't imagine will be as tough a test as it should be. I would say I'm not ready to make that declaration just yet. Have you tried to figure out the West, by the way, all the
Uh,
ramifications and the tiebreakers?
it's crazy.
I'm
Oregon, UCLA, and USC. It's nuts.
I'm pulling
Yeah.
for a 7-team 5-4 tie. So everybody's deadlocked. No, I'm waiting till we get there. But Doug, you mentioned something in our weekly talk that I think is very worth bringing up here, and that's the fact that Ohio State showed some cracks in the armor in the bad weather against Northwestern, and you thought that was more significant than even the big name crashes over the weekend. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, it's because, I mean, Michigan controls its own destiny, right? If they run the table, they are going to the college football playoff. In fact, even if they lose in the next couple of weeks and beat Ohio State and beat the champion of the Big Ten West, they're probably going to playoff then anyway. As I don't foresee them losing to Nebraska or Illinois at this point, because Illinois just lost to a last place team in the East. In fact, Illinois has lost to 2 teams that are in last place in the
Indiana.
East.
Yeah, right.
Remarkable.
Yeah.
But, the most significant thing is, so Tennessee losing or Alabama losing, those things only become significant if Michigan loses to Ohio State. But, preferably, I would imagine Michigan fans would prefer to just go ahead and beat Ohio State. And Ohio State is showing vulnerabilities. Now,
right.
I think everybody that's a Michigan fan is perfectly aware of Michigan's vulnerabilities too, right? But there was this perception that Ohio State didn't have vulnerabilities. And I would say that was inaccurate. The trouble to run the ball against, to just shove it down Northwestern's throat, or to keep Northwestern from having any success. I mean, Northwestern didn't score 28 points, but they had some success running the ball, doubling their average rushing total when you knew they weren't going to throw. So you bring in a Michigan rushing attack, and it's going to be a different deal playing down in Columbus. It always is. I mean, it's I've come to learn in the years of being on the sidelines at games, it made me realize, and I think this applies to Ohio State as well. If you go on the road and get the win, to hell with style points. It doesn't really matter.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Come home. Put it in your bag and come home. And the fact is, that does apply to Ohio State. But I think Ohio State, over the last few weeks, we have seen some vulnerabilities, and it just makes them mortal, okay? And there were years where Michigan could line up against Ohio State 10 times, and Ohio State would win 9 of them. And that time appears to be over.
Yeah. And too many of those in recent years, as you well note. My thing down there is to win at Ohio State by 1, you better win by 10, because it's a tough place to play. Tom, your reaction to what Doug just put out?
Well, I agree with Doug when he talked about that. I watched the entire Ohio State game. I know you guys were on the road. You probably saw it down in Piscataway, but I'm telling you what, I was just baffled. I mean, this team looks terrible. They can't run the freaking football. Northwestern could, if Fitz had been a little bit more aggressive, it looked like he was playing the game to lose by a touchdown or 2, and actually throwing the ball when he had that tailwind. I was shocked by that. They could have lost that game. But my theory on this, on Ohio State variable, guys, is this: Michigan has got to beat Ohio State, because I'm trying to look at all these scenarios. If Michigan loses to Ohio State, how Michigan could get in the playoff, and none of it works. And part of it is for what Doug talked about Ohio State. You're losing to a maybe not that tough Ohio State team. But when you look at all the, I don't see it happening. Do you, Doug? Michigan getting into the playoff with losing to Ohio State. It's not working.
Here's what could benefit Michigan. If they go play a classic game, undefeated versus undefeated, and it's, let's say, 42-39 with a late hit late in the game that seals the deal for Ohio State. One of those kind of games.
So like horseshoes, play it close. Close as counts, right?
Play a great game.
06.
Everybody's saying wow. And then the teams that Michigan is up against would be potential, and Georgia runs the table.
Yeah.
And TCU and Ohio State are 1, 2, 3. Georgia 1, Ohio State 2, TCU 3. And Michigan is up against Tennessee, which has already lost to Georgia, and Oregon, who wins the Pac-12, which has already lost to Georgia. Will the committee say, let's put Oregon, who lost 49-3 to Georgia, up against them in Atlanta, in the Peach Bowl, in the same stadium they opened the season at, for a rematch? Will they say, let's put Tennessee up against Georgia, which scored late to make that closer than it looked, in a rematch? Or will they give the nod to Michigan? And that's where I think you might have a bit of it. Now, we could argue about whether or not a rematch should matter, whether the criteria should be just be the best 4 teams, or if they try to avoid a rematch. I will just argue that back in 2006, what we heard is, we don't want a rematch. And we've seen Ohio State beat Michigan. We don't want a rematch. So maybe the criteria will have changed, but I think that could work in Michigan's favor. Now, USC or UCLA could go out and win the Pac-12 and take the Oregon variable out of it. And Tennessee, I have much respect for their strength of schedule. And I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. And Doug, this is where the 3 group of 5s that I was complaining about in the summertime, including at Big Ten Media Days, the Harbaugh, this is where it's going to bite you in the ass when you're playing. At home, 3 group of 5s, and same thing next year. I had this gut feeling this is going to get them later on, and it's lining up like it might just happen. Don't you give it to Tennessee, Doug, as opposed to Michigan?
Yeah, you could. I mean, I can understand why. It depends I think it does depend on who Tennessee is playing. Do they really need to see a Tennessee Georgia rematch would be the argument for Michigan. But I mean, that's the group of 5 thing is unfortunate. You guys, I don't know how much you guys have discussed how Michigan
a lot.
That.
Yeah. Oh, the UCLA thing?
Yeah, the UCLA thing, because next year they would only had 6 home games. They tried to get UCLA to flip-flop. So this year Michigan would have played at UCLA. Right. UCLA wouldn't do it, so they canceled it. Yeah, it could bite them in the butt. And I've sat here and argued with John Borton for years. 20 years.
Decades.
A tough schedule. And
I'm all about it.
Favorite cupcakes. John wanted cupcakes. John, you got what you want, and it might cost Michigan a playoff spot. I hope you're proud of yourself.
Hey, Doug, I had the same argument with Disney. It was repeated this year. The same thing. Oh, well, give these guys some experience. You kept doing the experience thing. And
and they're undefeated. It all has them undefeated. Look, if they handle their business and take care of Ohio State, they've got 0 worries because they're going to have another Big Ten championship game like they had last year. And even if you get into that Ohio State game and you lose a 2006 style game, I predicted this before the season started. I still think you have a great chance to have 2 Big Ten teams in the playoff. Gary Danielson, I was a little surprised to hear him say that he could see the same scenario playing out. And somebody on our board mentioned the fact that sounds like somebody that knows he's going to might be doing some Big Ten games in the future.
Yeah,
but,
that doesn't sound like Gary Danielson.
Gary
it doesn't.
Gary did say if there was a 14 playoff in 2006, he would have argued vehemently for Michigan and Ohio State. And I actually called him out on the air back then and said, I think you're only doing this because you work for the SEC. And Gary basically said, so? And so to his credit, that's what he said. I think Gary's a great analyst. And, Gary's opinion or John Borton's opinion or Tom Crawford or Doug Karsch, it doesn't matter. It's only the people in that room, right? And, we'll see. What we're talking about is dealing with a fire that hasn't been started yet. Michigan can take care of business, and I feel much better about them taking care of business this year than I did a year ago at this time. And I think Michigan, they've won 21 of their last 23 games. They haven't really played a close game this year. There have been games that have been close-ish at halftime, and then Michigan wiped people out in the second half, which is really impressive. And we can get into all the reasons why they've done it, but it's been very impressive. And, that, by the way, can be another feather in Michigan's cap. Hey, even when they played opponents like, let's say, Penn State, which played Ohio State tough, Michigan blew them out in the end, right? So, we'll see what happens when Ohio State goes to Maryland. And that's kind of that can be a tricky game. And like I said, you pack up any road win and you take it. We know what happened to Ohio State a few years ago down at Maryland when it looked like you were
cliffhanger.
Had the game won on the last play.
Unbelievable.
Right.
Yeah.
That leads right into my next topic, which is, can anything derail the clash of the undefeateds in Columbus here in a few weeks? I say no. I think these 2 teams are going to make it there to Columbus in late November, both undefeated. Your thoughts? Doug, you go first.
So, look, you have to for that to happen, you have to no-show, right? You have to have your team play well below their capability and have somebody else play their best game. If you look at the schedule, maybe not Illinois. Maybe Illinois doesn't have to play their best game in Michigan, but Michigan has survived their no-shows. They survived the first half at Rutgers. They survived their inability to put away Penn State early. Like, that game had all kinds of things that you felt like Michigan would regret not taking advantage of early in that game. When you're undefeated, you usually play well. with some rare occasions. That might be a half here, a quarter there, and sometimes a full game. As we get to the point where there's only 8 quarters left between Michigan and undefeated Ohio State, it feels like they have narrowed that chance down coming in here and beating them, given what Nebraska is. Illinois could still be tricky. I mean, I know that it's easy to dismiss them because of what just happened, but if Illinois comes in here, hyper-focused, plays their best game, Michigan's going to have to work to get that win, is what I believe. And I think they will, but you don't want a no-show on that day.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You still have to play some ball down the stretch. But, Tom, what do you think? Are we going to have the clash of the Titans with zeros at the end of their record going into Columbus?
Oh, yeah, 0 with the Titans. You know, the kind of game I think that Michigan would have to a shoddy performance would be somewhat what Jim Harbaugh was a senior back in 1986. Remember the Minnesota game? I think Ricky Foggy was on that, where all they did was start turning the ball over. You know, they're playing Minnesota and they lost a walk-off win for the Gophers, and then they went down there and Harbaugh guaranteed to beat Ohio State, and he beat Ohio State. But I mean, it would have to be a turnover fest, I think, for either of these two teams. And guys, I watched the entire Michigan State-Illinois game, and Illinois became Illinois. I mean, they were back to what I perceive them to be. It goes back to that Indiana game. I watched that game, and I don't see them being able to run the football against Michigan's defense. And I think that's going to be a tougher game, because I think Brett Bielema's done a great job with that team. But I would be shocked if Michigan drops either of these two home games. Michigan is pretty doggone good at home, guys. You all agree with me on that?
All right. And understand that we are wrapping up our time with Mr. Karsch. Thanks for joining us today, Doug. And we'll do it again sometime.
Difficulties earlier. I'll try to bounce in. Tuesday's a crazy day for me, but I love chatting with you guys and everybody on the Wolverine website. So good to see you. I'll circle back in the future.
All right, Doug. See you. Take care.
Sounds good. Thanks, Doug. All right. Well, that will we're gonna bring it down the home stretch with Tom Crawford and myself. And thanks much to Doug Karsch. You can hear him on 97.1 The Ticket in the Karsch and Anderson show. You can also hear him, obviously, as the voice of Michigan football on the Michigan Football Network. And check him out doing the play-by-play along with John Jansen as the analyst for Michigan football. And every Monday, Doug stops by the Wolverine to give us his thoughts from the broadcast booth. So check that out. We got a couple more topics to go, Tom Crawford, and I appreciate, as always, your takes on this stuff. You got all aligned with Doug Karsch, our guest, because you guys are the, you gotta play Texas and Notre Dame and Alabama in the preseason or in the non-conference season.
No, just play.
I guess.
Hold it, Jamie.
I know you. I know
one Power 5. You don't even have to be a good Power 5. Go do a home and home with Iowa State. Okay, just get the 3. And I'm not, not hating on Group of 5s, or at least play somebody from the Sun Belt. Bring up Appalachian State, Coastal Carolina. I watched Coastal Carolina and Appalachian State play. Those teams could beat half of the Big Ten teams with speed alone. Just a better Sun Belt team. Now, East Carolina is one of those better Sun Belt. I'm just saying, get better teams than what we had this past year if you're going to go non-Power 5.
No, I get it. I'm just
sorry to I'm in
part. In part, I'm walking past, whistling past the graveyard here because you don't necessarily want that schedule to come back and bite Michigan. And I don't want it to happen for another reason, because of the way that I have talked about this over the years, and to you and to Doug Karsch. So
we'll never let you forget it.
There's no question about that. Here's one for you, and it's probably good that Doug's gone, because in his position he would have to maybe recuse himself from this discussion. But who is, in your mind, Michigan's MVP coach at this point of the season?
Oh, that's a really good one. Sharon Moore, that O-line. I mean, how do you say no to that? And then at DC at Jesse Minter. I mean, how do you say no to that? Uh,
Mhm.
Maybe Cole. I don't know. I mean, there's been a lot of, good, I would have thrown Jay Harbaugh in the mix on that until what happened at Rutgers last week
Well, there you go.
with the special teams. That's a
Uh-huh.
big. I mean, special teams. It's funny. Special teams, and special and the missed field goals. I know 50 yards, but I mean the special teams was the only real negative of what happened at Piscataway. You think about
I agree, and I would have to say that the better that type of dramatic special teams breakdown happen at Rutgers, and then have you say, "Oh man, we got to pay more. We got to work on that and pay attention to that," than have it happen here in 3 weeks.
it. Yeah,
But anyway, I know what you're saying. I do lean a little bit towards Jesse Minter just from the fact that, remember what happened when Michigan lost its defensive coordinator from the Baltimore Ravens after only a year. And everybody was like, oh my word, how could this happen? And how are they now? They lost their rush ends, and now they lost their defensive coordinator. This defense is really going to be you're going to have to make up for a lot
yeah,
there.
yeah,
And when I mouthed the ongoing sentiment going into the season down in Indianapolis, and it came across the ears of one Mozzie Smith, I will never forget how he set his jaw and said, "Let him keep talking. Let him keep talking. Let us be the
yeah,
weak spot."
yeah,
It's
yeah.
like that every year.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Uh,
and for Minter to come in and have this thing become so seamless and have a defense that's giving up an average 12 points a game, I just think is really something at this point.
but you know what? What's the commonality there? It's Baltimore Ravens DNA. Okay.
Yes,
It's the
sir.
ball. I mean, Jesse Mentor was in that franchise, was in that on that NFL team coaching staff for 4 years, and then he did the Vandy thing and that's that doesn't even count with me. It's the 4 years with the Ravens, okay, and I mean you can tell. I mean, and the terminology, and I mean we heard about this. It's pretty much the same as Mike McDonald, and this is a young guy. This is why I don't think he's like 38 years old. This guy is the real deal. Now the biggest challenge for Michigan is keeping this guy on board, like it is when anytime you have a good DC. But I think by the end of the year, you're going to hear his name a lot in terms of the
Yes.
accolades because of what we're seeing in the second half. And in reality, I mean, sometimes like in the Michigan State game was not, I mean, they gave up some big plays to Keon Coleman, and what did they do? They doubled down on him and they took him out. I'm talking about Michigan State game, in the first half, cut him out of it. And look what Michigan State had, no first downs in the third quarter, and they didn't get a first down until halfway in the second half, until halfway through the fourth quarter, and they got some garbage yards at the end. So yeah, halftime adjustments are big. Maybe pitch a complete game would be nice for this defense, and I'm sure that might happen these next couple of weeks. And it all comes down to Ohio State, though. I mean, all this stuff we've talked about on the podcast, John, it's
Yeah.
got one premise: beat Ohio State. And it's almost like, and it's like Michigan's got to pitch a perfect game as the 12 games. You got to pitch a perfect game because of their weak non-conference. Okay. So go pitch a perfect game. Okay. Just go do it. And then you don't have
Absolutely.
any of these variables. And we're all doing these woulda, should. I mean, we're all doing it. Well, what if, we're all trying to create Michigan equity if Michigan loses to Ohio State? Let's get the Michigan lose to Ohio State out of our system and just focus positively that they're going to beat Ohio State. Because I
Feels
think now they're going to beat them. I really do.
feels like the 1970s all over again. It's all or nothing.
Yeah.
And you might as well go into it with that mindset.
Hey, it's a 3-team. Look at. They're in the playoffs. Let's be real. They're in a. It's three. You win 3 games to be a national champion, and you start with a road game, and you get a couple of neutrals. Okay. One's in hopefully the Peach Bowl in Atlanta, and the other one would be out in SoFi out in LA. Okay. So there's your schedule. So there you got the playoff schedule all laid out. So just go do it.
I like how you're taking the Big Ten championship game for granted.
Oh yeah,
and I understand why. I understand why.
Forget?
All right. Hey,
that's a 14.
Before
yeah,
we,
right. Yeah.
Before we go, we are into basketball season because they tipped off in earnest last night with a victory, a fairly easy victory. Your thoughts on Juwan Howard's basketball team and how it performed in that opener?
Well, I liked it. People say Purdue, Fort Wayne. Well, they're picked number one in the Horizon Conference, although their best player did not play. So we got to throw that little caveat in there. But who doesn't like Jet Howard? What you saw it last night. I mean, this is a dude who looks. He's got fluidity. He's moving, and he's got a quick release. He's got a great looking shot. He's going to be a terrific player. And he glides. I love that guy. And then Hunter played pretty doggone good last night. I mean, he missed like two shots. He ended up with 22 points. He got several boards, and he is just a big dude. He is going to frustrate a lot of teams, John, just by his sheer height. I think. And remember, we were in the presser and we were asking Juwan a lot. We're picking at little players here and there. Kobe, and then he got a little defensive on. Did you notice that? He says, guys,
he's protecting his players.
Yeah, it's one play. Yeah. It's one play. Yeah. One game, guys. I mean, that happened a couple of times, and so then when I got to my turn, I made sure it was a general question, and not have just one player. But I think
Juwan had his game face on.
Yeah, he did. And I don't think he was completely satisfied the game but things that bother me. That worry me. Our free throw shooting is one, and then the rebounding. They got out rebounded in the first half. That's another one, and then getting perimeter shooting at the guards is Kobe. Juwan's not here to get irritated with me, but Kobe. I mean, I got to see him knock down that one in the wing. He can't knock. I haven't seen him knock it down enough to start believing that he's, I'm sure we're at game one, but Kobe's got to have to deliver because Hunter's reversing the ball. He's getting good looks. He's got to knock it down. Kobe Buffkin. Because, I don't think Llewellyn, is Jalen Llewellyn. He only had 2 points. I think he's more of a distributor. And this Doug McDaniel is truly a distributor. And that drive to the basket, I swear to God, took me back to Ricky Green. You know which one I'm talking about?
I know exactly. Goes behind the back and then crosses over.
And crosses. That was crazy downhill speed with a ball. I like that kid, and I think he's going to play more and more. And Joey Baker's got to hit some. He's got to be. Yeah.
Hit the shots. He can have a fun year. One thing that was I really noticed and was kind of half amusing to me, but is serious business for Juwan and this team is the fact that he knows they're going to have to play better defense, and he knows that they can play better defense. So you would see one of these situations where Jet Howard makes a fantastic play and makes a great shot, and the crowd's going crazy.
Yeah.
And here's Juwan. He's waving it back. Get back.
Great
I mean,
Yeah.
He was working it, and it was almost like Jet is. What?
Yeah.
I made a good play.
Well, I think Jet was falling down in a couple of those. He had to pick himself off the floor. But that's a great point because you remember, I'll never forget that Minnesota game, the first Big Ten opener last year, when that Jamison battle. Remember that dribble drive penetration that Minnesota had? It was like jaw-dropping. I mean, is there anybody that can stop the ball? And that really plagued that team for a lot of the season, not all of it. They shored that up a little bit better. I mean, this is a team that had a 17-14 record, was a quote-unquote bubble team, got in, and then was eliminated early on, or got into the tournament, the Big Ten tournament. Indiana took care of them, and they got in the tournament, okay. But they won 2 big games down in Indy that I attended. We were there, and the fact that they beat number 2 seed Tennessee, I mean, that made that season, those 2 games. That was the season. In my estimation, this team's going to build off that 2-game set. But you got to stop dribble drive penetration. That kills you, absolutely kills you. And Michigan, when they play a good team, I got to see it to believe it that they're going to be able to do that. I hope we see it, and we're going to find out soon.
Absolutely. I think you're going to see plenty more out of this team. You've got some EMU action coming up. You're going to have
Amani Bates.
Amani Bates, no doubt about it. Hey, appreciate you being with us as always. We got to wrap this thing up, but it's been great. Our thanks to Doug Karsch, who was able to drop in on us for a while. We're going to have another special guest next week, and we will keep a lid on who that is for now. But I'm just saying, come back and join us. John Borton, Tom Crawford, and a guest to be named later as we bring it down these last few weeks before Ohio State getting more and more exciting. Tom Crawford, thanks for being with us.
Always a pleasure, JB. See you in the box on Saturday afternoon against the Huskers.